So we'll just wait another minute here, Peter, and just wait for everyone to join the call. Slowly coming in here. Okay. Great. All right. Well, I'm going to kick us off here. So welcome everyone and good morning, and welcome to today's Business Support Series webinar. Thank you for all of you for joining us. My name is Chris Mann, Sponsorship Specialist with the Halifax Chamber, and your host today. We're talking about our business's most important asset today, talent. Hiring and retaining good people is key to success, a good corporate culture, and continued growth. This is a challenging part of business. Do we hire for fit with the team? Do we hire only for skill? It's a balancing act, and our expert here today will highlight the keys of hiring talented selling professionals, recognizing, attracting, and especially retaining. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions for our presenter. When we get to the Q&A, feel free to type any questions in the chat box. You can find that below. And our presenter today and guest speaker is Peter Skakum. Peter focuses over 40 years of selling experience exclusively on selling education. Tangent Strategies teaches company leaders how to hire and retain most talented selling professionals. So welcome, Peter, and I'll throw it over to you.
Thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate the introduction, and welcome everyone to our webinar. This morning, we are going to be talking about selling, and more specifically about how to hire and how to keep the best, the most sophisticated and professional selling talent, selling people. You know, within a short period of time, we should be out of this pandemic, and when we are, the companies that have the best salespeople at their disposal in their employ, they are going to recover first, and they are going to recover best. So this is certainly the time to be giving serious thought about hiring great salespeople. Some of you here this morning are likely leaders of your company. You are the bosses. Others may be aspiring to that role. But whether you are aspiring or whether you know from practical experience, I think we can all agree that being the boss carries with it awesome responsibilities, huge obligations, not to mention the risks and the stresses that go along with running a company. You know, your decisions have a huge impact. The decisions that you make as a boss determine whether your lights stay on or whether they go off. They determine whether your doors remain open or are locked down. Your decisions influence the volume of revenue that comes into your company on a daily basis. And that's critical revenue. Think about it. It's money that pays the bills, it pays the salaries of your employees, pays your salary. So the decisions you make are huge and instrumental to running a great company. And these are decisions that you make in, what we would call the best of times. But here we are in what some people would say are the worst of times. We are in the middle of a pandemic, an understatement to say the least. And we haven't been trained with life skills or business skills to deal with a pandemic. We have simply been doing the best we can to survive. And survival has two impacts: physical and economic survival. So we are all working hard to make this work, in spite of the fact that some of us may have lost family or friends, business colleagues or employees to the pandemic. Bottom line is, it is not easy being the boss. But I can tell you this. The good news is that you do not have to handle all of this in a vacuum. Some of your best people, some of the people who have your back are your salespeople. Yes, your salespeople. And think about it. I mean, salespeople are out in the marketplace. They are literally your eyes and ears. You can't be there. You're back in the office. They're out on the front lines. They are watching. They are listening. They are accumulating market intelligence, and they are bringing that information back to you to help you make the most informed and timely business decisions that you have to as a boss. These people are also tasked with continuing to bring in more and new revenue to your company, while at the same time making sure that you hang on to the customers that you currently have, your customer base. That's critical. You know, over the years, I can still hear people saying, Peter, you know, it is so tough to find great salespeople. Others have said it is so difficult to hang on to great salespeople. And, you know, when someone says that to me, I can't help but ask some drill down questions. And when I do, what I typically find is that the reason some employers are really struggling with hiring and keeping great salespeople is their hiring methodology to begin with. The type of remuneration they offer salespeople. And so many of the false ideas that are out there about selling, about salespeople, who they are, what they do, how they do it. So what I recommend to any employer hiring salespeople is reach out to your marketplace. Reach out to your prospective clients, to your current clients, and ask them, what skill sets do they expect and need and want from your salespeople? Ask them what level of integrity, what depth of character do they accept or expect from your salespeople? And ask them what levels of support they need and want. What kind of direction do they need? Guidance, advice, answers. You know, often we think of our salespeople as tasked or mandated to help us grow our companies, make our companies more successful and profitable. But you know, at the same time, salespeople who are really doing their job are doing the same thing for their customers, helping them and helping their companies become more successful and more profitable. That's what great salespeople do. You know, I find that these qualifications today are probably more relevant, perhaps more important than ever before. Think about it. There are companies that have lost tremendous market share. They are hanging by a thread. Some have shut down completely and are just waiting out the pandemic. And then think of the industries that have been decimated. The hospitality industry, the travel industry, the sporting events and theatrical events, the trade shows, the conferences, the conventions, hurt very, very badly. When the pandemic is over, those companies and those industries are going to have to hit the ground running. Time is of the essence. They need to recoup their market share. They need to get back into the game, and they need to get back quickly. And the one sure way of doing that is having great salespeople at your disposal. When I'm working with my clients, helping them to hire great salespeople, I have certain qualifications that I look for when we are interviewing salespeople. And one of them, the first one on an education level, is I look for an MBA with what I call a psychology chaser. And what I mean by that is someone who has also studied psychology, or at the very least has the aptitude for that discipline, who has the sensitivity to watch for human motivation and react to it, act to it. Because human motivation is a huge part, I think you'd agree, is a huge part of what selling is all about. And then the next thing I look for is entrepreneurial spirit. And that comes in a couple of different packages. Package number one is the candidate for the job who may have owned their own small company at one point, or who may have managed a company at one point. These people know the responsibilities, the obligations, the risks, the stresses. They've lived them. And they come with this built-in empathy for the boss, for the person who could be the one who hires them. They understand what the boss is going through. And that is the kind of person you want to have, the kind of salesperson you want to have at your back. The other entrepreneurial spirit is perspective. Most employees, as employees, I challenge employees and certainly salespeople to look at themselves this way. And I look for that demonstration in an interview situation. A salesperson who sees themselves as the owner of a wholly owned corporation that provides a specialty service. They provide selling services to their customer, who in this case is the boss, the person who's going to hire them. So they see themselves as a company, and they are. I mean, they have expenses, they have income, they pay taxes. The parallel is there. And their customer is the employer. And they know they have to keep the customer satisfied in order for their company to stay afloat. So that's entrepreneurial spirit. Then I look for someone who has interview skills. In a job interview, the candidate, as a rule, sits passively, answers questions put to him or her, and provides great answers in most cases. But what I look for is, when I'm interviewing someone who is to be a salesperson for this company, I look for someone to take the initiative to start doing the interviewing themselves, waiting for the right moment and knowing the right questions to begin asking the employer. Because a great salesperson knows that in order to satisfy the employer or their customer, they have to understand what the customer needs, when they need it, how they need it. And by asking those kinds of questions, they then can evaluate themselves right there in the interview to determine whether they have the wherewithal to satisfy that employer or that customer's actual needs. I look for someone to take the initiative. Most of the time, candidates wait, and the interviewer says, well, I'm done with my questions. Do you have any questions for me? When I see someone taking the initiative before that is offered them, that impresses me, especially when it comes to a salesperson. Then I look for someone who is really great at efficient time management. Remembering that salespeople are often out there on the front lines with very little supervision, in fact, probably no supervision. So the boss has to trust that she has hired well, that she has hired someone who really knows how to manage their time properly, efficiently, for the good of the company. This is a person who understands that time is a precious, non-renewable resource. Once it's gone, time is gone. Once it's gone forever. So she wants to have a salesperson who is spending their time, most of their time, with people, companies that are truly ready to buy. I look for people that have the integrity of a Supreme Court judge. People who have the resolve and the calm of an emergency first responder. And I look for people who have the analytical skills of a CIA operative. And I don't think I am overstating those qualifications at all. We're looking for great salespeople. Great salespeople. We have to have these qualifications. And many do. And many do. Finally, I would say I look for individuals who know how to close properly. Over the years, we've often been given the impression that closing, a great salesperson, just keeps on talking, keeps on pestering the customer, and doesn't let up until the poor customer finally signs on the dotted line and surrenders. And it sort of doesn't matter how the salesperson got the sale. The important thing is they got the sale. Well, that kind of closing can work. It has. But it's short-term gain for long-term pain. That person will never be welcomed back into that office or in that home ever again, and given selling another black eye. Great closing is someone who interviews their prospective customer really well, understands exactly what they need, knows with certainty, with impartiality and objectivity, that they have what it takes to satisfy the customer, and then they gently guide the prospect to help them make the most informed and timely buying decision. And they do, and both sides are happy. Those are the qualifications that I look for. From time to time, I'm asked whether personality profile assessments are valuable in interviewing salespeople. Excuse me. And my answer is yes, but with a caveat. And that is that it's important for the employer to test what the criteria being used by the assessment company, test the criteria to see that it is not filled with old ideas, the tired ideas, the ideas that are manipulative in selling. Because if they are, ultimately all that will happen is you will end up hiring a mediocre salesperson who will not last very long. But if the criteria does reflect evolved selling methodology, sophisticated selling methodology, then yeah, I think it's probably a great idea. We have to keep in mind what it is we want salespeople to do for us. First and foremost, I want salespeople to elevate the level of respect that the marketplace has for their company. Next, that they're able to keep their products and services constantly top of mind with their customers and with their prospects. And that they are always in the loop, knowing what it is the marketplace, what the prospects and customers need and want, and when they may need and want that. And I look for someone who retains existing customers and attains the revenue goals that you as the boss set for those salespeople. You set the goals. The job of the salespeople is to achieve those goals on your behalf. And I look for someone who is going to be loyal And if we've hired well, if we've done our job in hiring well, then they will be. They won't be spirited away by someone, a competitor, that may offer them a few dollars more. Loyalty is very big. But you know, these people, these professional salespeople, cannot be attracted, nor can they be retained by offering them a form of remuneration that is commission or a base salary plus commission. And these are the top-notch salespeople who will look for a salaried position, as they should. And if you as the boss don't offer it, your competitors are out there to do that instead. And they take the great salespeople. But I understand too that small companies may have a hard time finding the funding to offer a salary package. I get that. When I see that, I wonder if the company is undercapitalized. And as you may well know, a company that is undercapitalized may be in a danger zone. But there are funding options available to companies. It could be they may have to bring in a partner with capital. It could be they may have to attract a venture capital investor or a bank loan, or the federal government, especially these days, is offering quite a number of salary supplement programs that can be taken care of or taken advantage of. But you know, if all of that is not available or the owner of the company doesn't qualify, then she may have to do the selling themselves. And many small business owners do the selling themselves, not forever, but up to a point where their company grows to sufficiently that they can afford to pay the salaries of their employees. But you know, it's not simply money when it comes to hiring great salespeople. It boils down to, it comes to the corporate culture of your company. And you know what it is. You're the boss. You create that corporate culture. It's either supportive and welcome, or it's caustic. And if it is caustic, things have to change. And if they don't, it's likely that that company will be losing more than just their salespeople. So it does come down to, though, it comes down to making the right choices in the first place, doesn't it? It does. It does. In order to hang on to your salespeople, you have to do more for them. And one of the things that I do recommend is that you allow your salespeople to be part of the management of your company. Now, I'm not saying you have to show them the profit and loss statements of your company. No, not at all. But involve them in the management of your company, and they will feel woven into the fabric of your company. They'll feel a part of your company. It's when people feel a significant part of a company, they don't think about leaving. They don't think about leaving your company. What I mean by management is involve them in the research and development of your company. Involve them in the marketing strategy planning for your company. Selling is an integral component of marketing. It is not separate from marketing, although we may often think it is when we hear the phrase marketing and sales or sales and marketing. I could never figure out that term, right? Sales is an integral part of marketing, the way advertising is, the way public relations is, and so forth. We would never say, I just bought a car and a steering wheel. No, we understand the steering wheel is part of the car. And the same thing applies to selling when we're talking about marketing. Involve your salespeople in the strategic planning and projections of your company. And if you do, that makes a significant difference. Remember that these are the people who are out there gathering all this market intelligence, your eyes and ears. They bring back all this valuable information from which you manage your company. So it makes sense. Make sure that you provide your customers or your salespeople with the products and services they will take pride in selling. And as the boss, set honorable business examples. Set the standards, honorable standards. Employees watch the boss and what he or she does. It's trickle down, honorable standards. Allow your salespeople to make mistakes. That's one of the oldest management recommendations out there. It's Peter Drucker 101. Allow them to, we've all made mistakes and we learn from it. Celebrate the existing business. It's easy to celebrate, and we often do, the new contracts that come in, the new customers that come in, right? It's wonderful, and we should celebrate it. But we should celebrate the existing clients, the renewed contracts, and not take that for granted. Also, ask your salespeople what they think. Ask for their opinion, and mean it. A sincere question. A number of years back, quite a number of years back, when I was a young salesperson, I had a fabulous sales manager. His name was Ted Smerchansky. Ted Smerchansky was a very demonstrative sales manager, but he had the habit of bringing me into his office, and I'm sure he did this with the other salespeople as well. And he would share with me his plans and ideas for, weeks ahead, months ahead, years ahead. I'm sure, this was confidential information. But he trusted us, he trusted me, and he shared that with me. And then he would say, Peter, what do you think? And I have to say, I was, initially blown away. I mean, here I was, a young salesperson, a sales manager with huge experience, asking me what I think. And I'll admit to you right now, even as I tell you this story, it warms my heart. It does. That was very important to me. And Ted probably wasn't swayed by too much, being the kind of guy he was. But when he heard a great idea, he would fold it in and he would tell us about it and he would thank us for it. But ask your salespeople, what do you think? Very, very powerful. And educate your salespeople. Send them to the conferences, to the seminars, to the webinars, but be there with them. Here's what often happens. Sales managers send their salespeople to be educated, but don't go. So they don't have the intimate knowledge of what their salespeople have been taught. So their salespeople come back and they're excited. They're armed with new ideas that they'd like to put into play. They tell the boss. The boss says, "Whoa, hang on now. No. We do things the way I say that we should be doing. I say that we should do them." And so all these great ideas fall onto stony ground. Not to mention, they lower the morale of the salespeople who wanted to give these ideas a try. So go with your salespeople. Be part of the education. It's huge. It's really important. Keep your facilities in a constant state of repair. Your offices, your boardroom, your washrooms in immaculate condition. There is nothing more embarrassing than a salesperson bringing a prospective customer or a customer to a messy facility. And it's also not pleasant to be a person working for that facility and coming to work every morning in a place that's improperly taken care of. So, constant maintenance. And finally, always have your salesperson's back. You're a team. Have their back. And if you do these things, you will find that hanging on to great salespeople for the long term works really, really well. But as I said, making the right choices to begin with is pretty important. We have to choose right. And over the years, people have said to me, yeah, Peter, you talk about all these evolved methods of selling, but aren't pushy salespeople a normal part of selling? And my response to them is yes, it has become the norm, but in actuality, pushy salespeople are an abnormal part of selling. The word pushy itself is quite interesting. When I'm talking to audiences or a bank of students or my clients, I usually ask them, when I talk about selling, what is the first word that comes to mind? And without a word of a lie, 99% of the time, people shout out, pushy. Or if I say the word pushy, what profession comes to mind? And they say selling. Or what they often say too is used car salesman. And with all deference and respect to used car salesmen, because there are plenty of wonderful, high integrity, trustworthy used car salesmen. It's the bad apples, of course, that spoil it for them and for the selling industry as well. Gosh, people think bad things about salespeople as it is. It's too bad. I'm going to share with you some of what I call the mutated ideas out there about selling that we have become used to because we have been fed them for so long. Okay, here's number one. He is such a great salesperson. He has the gift of gab. I haven't heard that term in a long time, but I think you know what it means. It means that this salesperson is great because they talk a lot. They're always making pitches, pitching. They talk a lot. The unfortunate thing is that a salesperson that talks a lot is learning nothing. They're so busy pitching, they don't know what their customers need, how they need it, when they need it. And so, yeah, sometimes they close the sale. But it's oftentimes a poorly closed sale. And the customer is gone in no time. Okay, here's another one. Salespeople, great salespeople, never take no for an answer. They just keep on selling. And I think I made reference of that earlier on. And it reminds me, I was at a networking event not all that long ago. I think it may have been a Chamber of Commerce networking event. I miss them, I do. And I was talking to people, and I was finally approached by a lady who said, I asked her what she did for a living. She asked me, and I said, I work with corporations, helping them to improve their selling results and helping them to hire the best salespeople. And her eyes lit up, and she said, "Oh, great," she said, "then you'll know the answer to this question." And I said, "Okay, I'm game. What's the question?" She says, when does selling start? When does selling start? And I said, "Okay, go ahead, tell me, when does selling start?" She says, "Selling starts when the customer says no." And I hope I didn't roll my eyes. but I do remember feeling so disappointed for her that that was the way she was going about her business and selling that way. It was a shame. Probably one of the most egregious forms of mutated selling is cold calls. Now, we have all been the victims of the telemarketing cold call. And I don't know how many of you love receiving them, but the telemarketing industry has done themselves in. They've made it tougher for themselves. Cold calling does that. But what I'm referring to is the physical cold call. And that is when a salesperson walks into an office uninvited, unexpected, and expects everyone to drop what they're doing to listen to his or her sales pitch. And I can't think of anything more rude. I can't think of anything more intrusive. And I can't think of anything more destructive to trying to establish a business relationship. But it happens. It happens every day. The only good salesperson is a hungry salesperson. There's another one. The only good salesperson is a hungry salesperson. In other words, someone who is desperate, someone who will do almost anything to close a sale. I don't know about you, but I can't think there are too many of you out there who look forward to hosting a desperate salesperson, a bounty hunter. We avoid them. And finally, my all-time favorite mutated saying, adage about selling is, she is such a great salesperson, she can sell ice cubes to the Eskimos. Yes, you're right. In other words, what that is saying is that she's such a great salesperson, she can convince anyone to buy things they don't need or want. Is it any wonder, ladies and gentlemen, that salespeople are the most avoided business people anywhere? They are. They still are. But in deference to bosses, to salespeople, their customers, all of us here this morning, we have all been fed this information bit by bit over a long period of time. It still shows up in TV programs, in movies, in literature, on stage, in the media. It happens very quickly, sometimes very subtly, sometimes not, but it happens. And it reinforces all this thought process that we have about selling and what we think it's all about. So, when you are hiring a salesperson, the first thing I recommend that you do is hire someone who is an extension of yourself. Remembering that these are the people who are your eyes and ears out there, an extension of yourself. They're kind of like your agent, just like a movie star agent. They do the negotiations for you. They do the introductions for you. They bring you the business. They bring you the acting jobs. They bring you the customers. So you want to hire men and women who can increase your market share by doing it in an advisory fashion, in a diagnostic fashion, in a problem-solving fashion. You want to hire men and women who can objectively and impartially move slowly, carefully, a prospect, a potential buyer, to making a buyer decision. You want to hire men and women who can accurately represent your company, its reputation, your reputation, the glowing reputation of your employees accurately. Someone who can speak about your company publicly at a moment's notice. You want to hire men and women who can, on occasion, calm and appease a frustrated and ruffled customer, angry customer, and bring it to a calm, positive conclusion. And hang on to that customer. Remember, hanging on to your customers is pretty important. These salespeople that you hire can be mentors to your junior salespeople as they come in, as you hire more salespeople. These salespeople that you hire, these men and women, should be looked at as management potential. Someone who may move from being a salesperson to someone in a management capacity in your company. Salespeople are like everyone else. They're looking for room to grow. And you want to be able to provide that. Your salespeople, great salespeople, can attract new selling talent to your company. You don't need a recruiter. They will do the recruiting for you. They know exactly what you need because that's what they are. Hire men and women that will help you keep your job. And hire men and women to your selling positions that always have your back. We are in the home stretch of our webinar, ladies and gentlemen, and I'd like to leave you with a few thoughts and ideas in parting. You know, we have experienced life lessons and business lessons unlike anything that we would ever have imagined in this pandemic. But now we have the opportunity, very soon I'd like to think, the opportunity of moving into a post-pandemic zone or era in which we are wiser and we are better prepared to do great business. Better prepared in this context to hire the best salespeople. You know, selling is the lifeblood of most companies. And yet these positions are filled without the care and the dignity that one would hire other professions. And that's too bad. So what I recommend is when you are ready to hire another salesperson, stop, wait, and activate your imagination. Imagine you are hiring a VP of finance. Imagine you are hiring a director of human relations, an accountant, a marketing manager. Imagine you're hiring a Dalhousie professor, a pharmacist, a police officer, a court judge. Now, try to imagine, and I firmly believe you would never imagine this, offering these professionals, these specialists, remuneration in the form of commission or base salary plus commission. You would never think of doing that. And you know what these people would do. They would stand up, turn around, and walk out of your office and never darken your doors again. Thinking to themselves, what was he or she thinking? And yet, we somehow think we need to do that with salespeople. The very people who are on the front lines of our companies, bringing in new business, bringing in more business, hanging on to our customers. None of the professions that I mentioned bring in new business to your company. So think long and hard about what selling means to your company, what selling means to your customers, to your prospective customers. What do they need? What do they want when they are engaging your salespeople? And think about what selling means to the security of all your other employees. And when you do, when you imagine all of these things, you will be equipped to hire the best, most sophisticated, most evolved, and keep these selling professionals with your company for a long term. Critically important. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our webinar. And I hope I have answered a few of your questions. I hope that I have challenged some of your thoughts about selling. And so I thank you very much for attending our webinar. It's great to have been with you. And I turn the camera back over to Chris. And if there are any further questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great. Thanks so much, Peter. Really appreciate it. Great job. I do have some questions here, but I also encourage some of our participants, if you have any questions, there's a Q&A box just below there. You want to click on that. Thank you again, Peter. Great stuff. A couple questions that I had just through your presentation there. In regards to, you talked about the qualifications of a salesperson, and you talked about how important time management was. And I kind of think it back to being in a hiring role and time management being important for the manager hiring as well, the hiring manager.
Of course.
Reading resumes and trying to decipher those qualifications and not interviewing everybody, because that's quite a bit of time to do that. Are there things in a resume that you should be looking for when you're talking about the qualifications, and how, like, for me, like, it's difficult to find a salesperson just reading it on paper. I need to sit in front of them and kind of have a conversation with them. But is there anything that you should kind of highlight in a resume to really see if they meet some of those qualifications?
Yeah. Well, I would say what I look for, and sometimes you have to read between the lines in resumes. I look for people with life experience.
Okay.
Right. That they, I certainly look for people who have been successful salespeople in the past, but I look for business experience. As I said, I look for a certain kind of education as well. I look for what they say that signals me that they have an entrepreneurial spirit. I look for that. I think that is so huge in salespeople. So a lot of it is reading between the lines, and it can be tough, especially when you've got 100 or hundreds of resumes to read through. But I think that eventually you find that there are signals that tell you immediately they are just not qualified. The unfortunate thing, Chris, is that in some cases, selling is often the vocation of last resort, right? I've lost my job. I can't find another job. So I will go out and sell for a company, and I will do it for commission. To me, that is, and that's desperation. And I am not looking for that in a salesperson at all. So yeah, it's reading between the lines.
Okay. So flipping it back to the other side. So if you're a hiring manager and let's say you go through a bunch of interviews and you just don't have, that one salesperson that you're looking for, but I'm a small business, I need to get somebody in, and I'm really looking for a salesperson right away. What do you do? Like, do you go back out to market? Do you go and just hire the best and see if you can train them up to where the standards are for that organization? What would be your advice on that?
Well, I think if a small business, or any business really, really needs a salesperson right now, they want a salesperson who can sort of hit the ground running. Any kind of protracted training is probably going to be problematic. I think like anything else, you don't want to create problems for your business. Yes, you may need an experienced salesperson, one with the right qualifications. But if that person is not there, I would challenge an employer to take second best, because it's probably not going to work out. What I would do is I would also look at the criteria that is part of the job description that is out there that these candidates are reading. It could be that has to be changed. It could be a signal that that criteria is off just a bit and is attracting the wrong kind of people, which leave you in a no choice situation. I would not choose second best. I would stay at it and change that criteria.
Okay, great advice. And so once you've hired that person and you're in there, say if they, and I like your point on commission versus salary. Being a former salesperson, salary would be wonderful. It wasn't always an option. Sometimes you had to take the job that would be a salary and commission, or just straight up commission. How do you keep a salesperson from becoming complacent if they're just making a salary and it's not objective to anything that they sell?
You know what? I am so glad you asked that question, Chris. That's a huge question. And it speaks to the fact that we think that somehow salespeople are some different species of employee that has to constantly have a carrot dangled before them, that has to constantly be under threat in order to perform. So here's how I answer that question. Think about any of your other employees, and I speak to the bosses here today. Think of any of your other employees who are probably not on commission. Some of them do not perform well and maybe have to be let go and replaced and so forth. That happens in any position, even some of the lofty ones that I mentioned earlier on. But the one thing about salary is, number one, is if you are offering a competitive salary and a package, you as the boss are much, much, much more careful about who you hire. You are very discerning. I mean, that is an investment in a person.
Right.
You don't want that person not working out. You want to do everything to help that person be successful. But the thing is that salespeople are like every other person who is salaried. They understand as well as anyone does, if they don't do their job, if they don't perform, whether you are a pharmacist or whether you are a police officer or whether you are a university professor, if you perform, chances are you're not going to have your job very long. That's the incentive to do well. That's the incentive to be the best you can be. So salespeople don't need the threat of commission. It only turns them into the kind of salespeople most salespeople avoid: bounty hunters.
Right. Okay. Good insight. A question that I have, and you kind of alluded to it in your presentation about, opening up the door for a salesperson to kind of learn the inside workings of an organization through management and more learning that, which I think is a great point and a great benefit. Say again, 85% of our members are small business. Say if I don't have a salary that I can attract someone off from another position or off the street to come in, I don't have that salary. What are some other benefits that I can think of on top of that, opening the door from a management perspective? Because when you think about it, you're hiring someone, you don't want to open them up right away. They kind of have to earn a little bit of trust in you and them, kind of thing. But what are some other benefits that you could offer if you can't offer that really kind of attractive salary and benefits right at the get-go? Is there anything that you can do outside of that?
I think that again, what it comes down to is what information, what criteria is in the job description to begin with. Okay. And as an employer, I would ask myself, what kind of people do I want? You know, what are their qualifications, and you know, what kind of personality. And when I ask myself those, I give myself those answers, it helps me to understand what has to be in that job description. And you know, there are many times salespeople, any people are hired, uh, or they agree to be hired, not necessarily because they're getting a better salary. There are a variety of motivations that people have to have satisfied, and money isn't always that. I mean, if that person is going to take a significant cut in salary, that could be a significant cut in lifestyle. So I get that, but
Right.
you know, for the most part, introduced criteria into the job description that the most qualified people will go, I want to work for that company. And there are companies like that we would love to be able to work for, to say we work for. And if we take a bit of a cut in salary, the other thing that can happen is that an employer can say, here's the salary package right now, but as you learn more about our company, as you grow as a salesperson, there will be incremental raises. And if that salesperson is really doing their job, that's not going to be a hard thing for the employer to do, because the salesperson is bringing in more business. That's more revenue that can be apportioned to their salary.
Right.
So you don't always have to have the best salary.
Right. Okay, great. So one last question. I'm gonna flip it back to the hiring process. So now with COVID and things not being the same, sales is definitely not the same. You're not going out and meeting people, and you mentioned earlier, you know, networking and missing, you know, meeting people in person and stuff. And people may be a little bit apprehensive at meeting per se a stranger in person for a cup of coffee or talk about what they're doing. Would that change your focus going forward when you're being a hiring manager of what kind of salespeople you look for? Because sometimes I would always talk about like the salespeople that are able to build a relationship. So able to kind of maybe not have a little bit more of a longer sales cycle, so that they're not like, I guess, all on this call kind of thing. But is there anything that you would change or suggest hiring managers change where it's the new digital age, you're selling a little bit more on a virtual kind of landscape? Is there anything that you would change in terms of hiring or your approach?
First and foremost, I mean, one of the things that is true, I mean, and it was brought up in another Chamber of Commerce webinar, is the fact that we are moving into a hybrid economy. You know, part of which is physical interaction, and the other is digital interaction. So you're certainly looking for people who are comfortable with that digital interaction for sure. I think that it is really important during the pandemic not to lose touch with your customers. You need to have the salespeople, the specialists, to maintain that relationship. Right. And you know what? Relationships can certainly start digitally. Think of the dating industry. It's huge, and it's digital, right?
Right.
Long before the pandemic ever came around.
Right.
So I would think, obviously, we have to respect our customers' sensitivities with respect to the COVID virus, no question. But as we are coming out, and we will come out of this pandemic, we don't want to sit idly by doing nothing, waiting for that to happen. This is probably the best time to really seriously be thinking about hiring great salespeople and having them in place, ready, equipped, trained to hit the ground running the minute the pandemic is over. So right. I don't think anything has changed. We have to have great salespeople at our disposal, whether it's a pandemic or not. How we go about managing ourselves, yeah, that changes somewhat, and we are moving into that hybrid economy.
Right. Great. Well, Peter, we're out of time. So I'd just like to thank you and thank everybody for joining us today. And again, Peter, I appreciate you sharing your insights. So please join us again this Thursday for a webinar on how the pandemic is disproportionately affecting women professionals. The webinar was recorded today and will be available on our YouTube channel shortly. So I want to wish everyone a happy rest of the day and a great end to your week. Take care. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.